Thank you so much. Sameerah, I want to just thank you for your time today. And I want to just talk a little bit about, just get to know a little bit more about you, as well as we're talking about the Parental Power Summit. I wanted to ask you, Sameerah, can you share a little bit about why you got involved in being a community advocate?
Yes, I myself grew up in a predominantly non-Muslim area. So my family was the only Muslim family in our area. And for me, I had been very involved in interfaith work from a young age, just being involved in my community, letting people know about my religion, my faith, my values, and all that. And then when I was in the DC area, the Maryland area, I was interning for the Religious Freedom Institute. From there, I had got involved. I had learned about some of the concerns that the parents in Montgomery County were having. And in undergrad, I studied political science. I had been involved in political activism for a long time. And for me, that's part of my values as a Muslim, as a person of faith, standing up for my values, standing up for what I believe in, and calling to justice, calling to goodness. So when I learned about what was happening in Montgomery County in Maryland, I had wanted to get involved as best as I can in whatever capacity I could. That's why I joined together with some of the parents in the area. They helped to found Coalition of Virtue, which is an organization that partners with other people of faith, other people of no faith at all, just people who are willing to stand up for similar values in society and to promote those values. So that's a bit of my background.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And I did want to ask you, Sameerah, why do you think it is important for parents to stand up and fight for their kids?
I think it's important first and foremost because historically parents have been the only ones who are looking out for their kids. People don't in society, that's the role of a parent. That's what parents are called to do as parents, to direct the upbringing of their children, to look out for their kids. And ultimately they're the only ones who can do that. Other people in society may claim to be helping children or to be standing up for children, but it's a parent's right and it's a parent's responsibility to look out for their own children. So I think it's important for parents to come into that role and not only to take on that responsibility, but to have the ability to take on that responsibility, to be able to do that, for the law to allow them to do that, for our government to allow them to do that. Because at the end of the day, the government is not the one who is responsible for these kids. The government doesn't see them every day. They don't see their outcomes. They don't feed them food. The government isn't the one taking care of these children who love them, who care for them. It should be the parents who are filling that role.
And I agree. And I believe a lot of issues, our children are at the front lines right now, and they shouldn't be. It should be the parents and the leaders in the community. I think you touched on it a little bit in the first question, but I'll ask it. You and your team got together and spoke out and got a lot of attention. What was it that made you start in that area? What was it? Can you share a little bit about what got that spark started?
So it really was concerned parents that really got that spark started. Obviously, when you talk about concerned parents, it's just things. It's crazy the day and age that we live in, that things happen that parents would never expect to be happening surrounding their children. Their kids were exposed to things that parents would never expect them to be exposed to. I think what started it was some of the parents seeing the bills that were being written and passed in some of these legislative bodies in Maryland and then also in the United States in general. And parents just got scared. So I remember some of the other members of my organization, that's how it formed. They saw a few bills circulating in Maryland and they were very concerned that my child could be subject to X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't be able to have any custody over them, or I would be not be able to direct their make medical decisions for them or make decisions about their education. And so parents think there are times whenever people are proactive and they work for a long time on issues that they expect to become an issue. And then there are other times where people really, it comes down to the wire and we really do need to organize and it just happens. So I think this was that latter situation where, a lot of things just started happening all at once and parents really realize, hey, we actually do need to come together and organize. We can't keep dealing with things as they go. We need to organize, be strong, have a form a coherent body, a coherent organization to work through these challenges.
And I agree. And that's why we're having this Parental Power Summit, because you're right. There's already things in place in other states, where if your child identifies a certain way and you don't agree, they can take your child. I heard of another incident where a mother didn't want to give the recommended medicine they want to give their child in the hospital, and they took her child. Like, these are things that why we're having this Parental Power Summit is because we have to get ahead of it before it gets here. If we're fighting the issues that are going on right now, we're going to be behind. We're working on getting ahead of it. And what would you say to that parent that says, Sameerah and Darren, you guys are crazy. The stuff that you're saying is wild. Maybe you need to pump the brakes, relax a little bit. None of that stuff's gonna ever happen here. A lot of things on social media, it's not true. What would you say to that parent?
I would say go out and seek those examples because there are real world examples that these laws or bills or whatever that you're seeing being passed, they do affect people and they do have real world implications. Just like you were saying that you have yourself have seen examples of people this actually happened to. I myself know people that these things have actually happened to. And none of us exist in a vacuum. And I'm sure people like to give you data and science and all these facts and figures to skew your viewpoint one way or another, but ultimately it comes down to each person. So I would say connect to that person, whoever's questioning, whoever's asking you, ask them about their experiences, tell them about your experiences, what it's like for you being a parent, what your child has gone through, what even talk to your kids, talk to them, ask them what are things they see in school, what are things that they're going through that other people try to silence them and tell them, no, these fears are irrational. Because I think that's ultimately part of the parental powers movement as well, is empowering children. Parents are the ones that are really the ones that are going to give their own children a platform. So I think talking to your own children, giving people the stories of your children, of your experiences. I think people don't change through facts and figures. People change through emotion. People change through other people, connecting with people. So I think that's a really big advice I would give is give people real world examples, try to understand their viewpoint and try to explain to them your viewpoint because it might not necessarily be an issue where you completely disagree. It's just you're not looking at it the same from the same perspective.
And I agree. I think it's time that our leaders and our parents need to come together and not focus on our differences and what we disagree on. Let's focus on what we agree on. That's protecting our children, making sure they're well educated, that they feel safe, and we're preparing them for the future. And we spend so much money in our schools, and it just seems I don't understand how a lot of these kids can know their pronouns but don't know how to do math, don't know how to read or write. The focus is not on. We need to change the focus. And let me ask you, what is your biggest worry with some of the things in our schools?
One of my biggest worries is it might seem a bit macro, a bit abstract, but I think one of the biggest worries is a cultural shift or a paradigm shift to where there are no longer two sides to this story. There are no longer parents who believe XYZ and parents who believe something else. It worried that the narrative will shift completely to a point where, 1984 situation where we can't speak out, we can't say I believe in two genders, we can't say I believe anything without being challenged, without being shot down, without being silenced. I'm really afraid of a world that will subject people to living this way. I'm worried that children will be taken away by not only physical influences like the school that they're being educated at or the other community members around them, but all these other social influences. People don't even realize how big the internet is, how big social media is, how big other just societal influences are in that affect your children. So I think that's one of my biggest worries is that there will come a time where really parents can't have that relationship with their children. That society will make it so difficult to where it almost becomes impossible. And so that's why I really hope with this Parental Power Summit and with other work going on like it that we can push for this narrative to come back into play. That like parents and children are together for a reason. We're families for a reason. Families really matter at the end of the day. And I hope that truth can go forth and that ultimately we can continue living without a complete topsy turvy world.
And I agree. And I think about how the pandemic affected our children, how they closed their schools down. They know they shouldn't have closed them down. And then now they have all these new terminology, all these things they're putting in our children's head. And just because the voice is the loudest don't mean it's always right. And it's a very challenging time for our kids right now. And that's why I just think it's important that let the parents be parents. Let us teach our children the values that we want to teach them and allow our schools to focus on the educating our children and get back to the basics. Let me ask you, Sameerah, can you share a little bit about the Coalition of Virtue and how you got involved and started? And I don't know if you answered some of that in the beginning, but if you could just elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so the Coalition of Virtue, like I said, was founded primarily by, it was primarily Muslim parents who got together. They were from Montgomery County, Howard County, different areas in Maryland, and then also in DC, and then other community members who were friends with those people, who knew those people, who also had leadership positions within the Muslim community. Basically, those parents got together, they reached out to their connections, and that's how I got involved, was being put in contact with those parents and with the original members who founded Coalition of Virtue. And from there, the community came together and said, look, there are a lot of things going on right now in society that are attacking religious people, are attacking traditional people, people who stand for values. And as Muslims, we wanted to form a coalition or form an organization that can work on protecting those values from a political, from a policy, from a public standpoint. Because we felt that in the Muslim community, and I think in other religious communities, it's always been internal. We've always tried to preserve our own values within our own community, but we've not really done a lot of the legwork in forming institutions, forming coalitions that can come together and work on protecting our values from the outside and doing outreach to other communities. So I think one of our most important intentions behind Coalition of Virtue was reaching out to other communities, other faith communities, other communities in general who held our values. And we wanted to work with them to make sure that we can stay consistent on these values together and push for them together. That was the idea behind its founding. And so where it's gone from there, it started in Montgomery County, Maryland, with LGBTQ and forced indoctrination in schools. And then from there, it has branched out into some other issues, just in general, issues that the Muslim community cares about, but also other people of faith care about and other people of values care about in America. So the mission and the goal for the Coalition of Virtue is to push for legislative change and to push for policies that protect and preserve the values of Muslims and other people who share our values in American society.
And I think that's important that, like you mentioned, that your group, you have is majority of Muslims that came together to fight for the Muslim values, and there are other religions that have values as well. And we don't need to focus on our religions as we fight for our children. We can focus on fighting for our children. And like I said, I'm just grateful that we're having this conversation, that we can come together and then we can just show everybody that we can put any differences aside, whatever that might be, and just focus on our children. And that's most important right now in our community. It's time for everybody to put their differences aside. Let's focus on our children. Let's focus on making sure they're safe. And at the end of the day, we're going to teach the children the values that we want to teach them. And thank you for all the work that you're doing and for your organization. You guys are doing some amazing work and can be an example for others. And I did want to ask you as well, was there anything else that you want to share, maybe a concern you have or anything else that you might want to share?
Yeah, I think I want to touch on that point of diversity because I feel like diversity is often a talking point, or inclusion is often a talking point, and I think it oftentimes can be very superficial. It's including, I like to say, including colors and backgrounds, but not including actual values or viewpoints. So I think when it comes to diversity, like you mentioned, our organization, I think people across America, across the world even, are more interested in our similarities than we are in our differences a lot of times. And though our differences do matter, I do believe our differences matter, but I think we should be mature enough to put them aside and to work on things that matter even more. Because at the end of the day, we can't even discuss our differences if we're under attack from all sides. So I think, yeah, I think it really, I think it really frustrates me at times when people use our community for diversity points without realizing our community doesn't stand for whatever they're putting our faces on. They put Muslim women on posters for XYZ, and it's has nothing to do with what our faith stands for. So I think that to me is powerful in this movement that is coming to, that we're standing together and showing people what real diversity looks like. It looks like different people coming together for the same values. And I think that's what real diversity looks like.
And I agree. The world wants to separate everybody. The world wants to pin everybody against each other because I believe they're afraid what will happen when we all come together. And I think what we're starting to see, that there's a movement, and the movement is that our children are under attack. And I think that whether whatever religion, whatever it might be, we all see it. And now it's time to come together. When we need to be, all parents need to come together and be action. And let's get together. Let's be a community of action. And that's what's going to happen at this event. We're going to be able to provide resources and direction for parents that want to get in the fight. that want to learn what they can do, because I was just a regular dad sitting on the couch. And then once the pandemic came, and I shared it before, where they closed their schools down, you have to wear a mask, walk into in the restaurant, walk into your table, and you sit down and you could take it off. But they had the strip clubs and the nightclubs open, and it was just crazy. And I was not going to sit back when I got involved with other groups, and I do a lot of advocating for our children. So the bottom line is, parents, if you see things where you feel it's not right, then that means it's time for you to step up and do something about it. Don't let your kids be at the front line. They don't have the mental capacity to do it, and it's not right. We're their parents. We're the ones that's supposed to fight. If you don't have a child and you're an adult, you're supposed to get up. You're supposed to fight for every child, no matter their race, no matter their color, no matter what it is. We're fighting for all children here. Sameerah, I just want to just thank you so much for the work that you do. I know that you are very busy and you take time to speak with me today, but also you take time to join us on June 3rd. So I look forward to joining the stage with you and just leading this fight for our children. I thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. I look forward to it too.
Thank you.